Hello, welcome to class. I'm Temi. Today I will show you how to measure for skirts, how to take accurate measurements for skirts, how to take accurate measurement for skirt construction. So for this class, you'll be measuring on the inch side of your tape rule. So you people call this tape measure is okay. So you're going to be using the inch side. There are two sides to a tape measure, the centimeter and the inch. So that's that. You will need to, okay, let me use two tape. You will need to determine the waist for the skirt. There are several ways. Some people prefer to put their skirts on the above the belly button, some on the belly button, some the lower waist. I think I prefer this middle part, the one on the belly button, but then that doesn't suffice for everybody. Some people will tell you I want it lower, some higher. Wherever they decide the skirt to start from, that becomes the waist. So for this my client, I'm going to be using our belly button, the navel part for the waist. It is advisable you tie a rope around this part. What does this do? It allows your vertical measurement to be taken at the same spot. That way, there's no variation in the length of your construction. Let me break it down and bring it home. If, for example, I don't put this and there's nothing to guide where my measurement is starting from, I can have the added advantage of measuring correctly because I'm using the navel. That can serve as guide. But what if I'm using somewhere above the navel? I might not know where I measured initially when I want to measure length. So that is why something must guide to show you that this is where your length measurements are starting from. So I've explained also that there are two kinds of measurements. We have the length and circumference measurements. For the length, it's either vertical or horizontal. It's either you measure downward or you measure sideways. It depends. Then circumference, where you measure around the figure. Okay, so let me come this way. Take all your length measurements once. That way you are kept. So from this waist, you measure the waist to hip. You are not dragging your tape to the back like so. No. You only use your eyes to gauge where the hip line falls into. There is range for the hip measurements. Some textbooks say between 7 inches and 9, but there are different kinds of hip. Some people have high hip, some middle hip, some people's hip are lower. So you can't just use a range for everybody, except you are making a ready to wear. If you are making a made to measure, a bespoke outfit, it is important you take all the accurate measurements. Okay, so for this pattern making class, since you can see the person, the advantage still covers up for the person to take the measurement while the person is there. So I'll just measure our waist to hip is about 6 inches. Can you imagine? So you can't just use the same figure for everybody. Some will be 8, some will be 9. Okay, so our own waist to hip is 6 inches. Then you measure the waist to nail. The nail is the exact nail point. Okay, so you touch it, but you are measuring it by the side. You are not dragging it to the front like so. No, you are measuring by the side, but exactly where the nail is, you record. So the length of the skirt depends on the client. If it's a short length, ask the person, where do you want the length to stop? If she says here, then this becomes the length of your skirt. If she says she wants it to the floor, it becomes the length of the skirt. If she says she wants midi, that becomes the length of the skirt. But you measure the actual knee and whatever length the person says she wants. Okay, so that's that for the length measurement. For the circumference measurement, you are measuring just two things. That is the waist and the hip. So for the waist, you just take your tape round above the rope. If you are attaching this skirt to bodies, you might not make it too firm. Or if you make it firm, whatever ease you added to the waist of the bodies, you add that same ease to the waist of the skirt, so that by the time you are joining the skirt to the bodies to make a dress, you don't have extra allowance anywhere. Everything balances out and evens out properly. But if you are making just skirts, see what I'm wearing. I like my waist firm. There's no point wearing skirts and the waist is dragging. So you need to take it firmly, not chokingly, not too tight, but firm enough that the person can wear it and the waist will stay where it should be. So you measure the waist firmly. So that's that you record. Then you measure the hip. While measuring the hip, ensure that there's nothing in the person's pockets, either key or phone or anything that can add to the measurement. And please, it's important that your client doesn't wear bogus clothes. You want to measure someone, the person is wearing agbada. For God's sake, that's going to give you wrong measurements, because the circumference of the thickness of the agbada can be like 5 inches, which has added, or the person is wearing bubu. So you don't allow people to wear too thick outfits. Is something like this, very light clothes that won't really add so much to the measurement is preferable. So this, I will check there's nothing on our pockets. Then you can turn them, please, so that everybody can see. When you are measuring the hip, you measure the biggest circumference of the hip. Let me hide this. You don't measure upper circumference or lower circumference. You measure, and don't avoid touching your client unnecessarily. You can see where the hip is at the largest. So just take your tape run, and as much as possible, take all your measurements by the side. Don't now take the tape to the bone and you're now touching, or you're doing like this. Please take your hand, man. You're doing like this. No, that's not how we measure. So we use our eyes to check the circumference. You don't have to touch them. As much as possible, avoid touching them unnecessarily. So take your hip, take your waist, take the length measurements, and record everything. So that is just all you need to measure about skirts. If there will be any other thing that you need to know, I'll be showing you in class. So thank you. Ensure you use your own measurements. Don't use mine. I will see you in the construction class proper.